This episode of Going Forward is brought to you by Optmyzr, an award-winning PPC management tool used by advertisers worldwide. Save time and boost the performance of your PPC campaigns on Facebook, Amazon, and Google or Microsoft. Get a 14-day free trial at optmyzr.com/go/VIP.
Welcome to Going Forward, where inspiring conversations with leaders and entrepreneurs shape tomorrow. Dive into the depths of their journeys, the hurdles they've overcome, and the insights they bring to the future. Let's get moving right here, right now on Going Forward.
Man, I want the internet to know something. We're starting an episode of Going Forward right now, and the world's been trying to keep you and me apart, Alan, but we didn't let that shit happen today, man. We didn't let that happen. So I want to welcome all the Going Forward listeners to another episode. And today I have an amazing guest, someone that I think is going to drop a lot of jewels today. He's going to probably open up a jewelry store with as many jewels as he's going to drop today. He is a performance coach. He's a co-owner and at strength and conditioning coach at Elite Training Systems is what he was. But he has trained some of the biggest names in sports. I'm talking Kevin Durant, Kobe Bryant. And I told him in the beginning of the call that I'm going to ask him a lot of questions about that. But I want my good friend, Mr. Alan Stein Jr., to introduce himself to our Going Forward listeners. Alan, take it away.
Hey, Eric. Well, it's great to be with you, man. I know we had a couple of roadblocks, but we're finally here. Excited for a fun conversation. I think the best thing as far as an introduction is I've kind of had two separate careers, but they've been intertwined. For 20 years, I was a basketball performance coach where I focused heavily on helping players and teams improve their overall athleticism, movement on the court, mindset, and their approach to the game. And then in 2017, I decided to leave the basketball training space entirely and shift my gears to becoming a corporate keynote speaker, a motivational speaker, if you will. And that's what I currently do. I'm a keynote speaker and an author, but I really draw heavily on all of the lessons that I learned through the game of basketball and from some really incredible players and coaches. And I'm very fortunate and thankful to do what I do today, and look forward to conversations like this where we can help, share some ideas and some mindsets that your listeners will you get value from.
Man, that's awesome, man. And one thing we talked about in the beginning of the call is, for someone to train some very elite players, at some point, you got to be elite yourself, man. So I want to get into the motivational speaking and the keynote speaking, but then I want to kind of backtrack a little bit to your basketball career and talk about the things that actually, brought you exactly to where you are right now. So did you start out playing basketball? How was that?
Yeah, so basketball was my first love. I fell in love with the game at 5 years old, and I think it's really cool and something I'm really grateful for that here 40 plus years later, basketball is still a major pillar of my life, both personally and professionally. So I'm thankful that something I've been so passionate about my entire life is still a driving force to this day. I was a fairly decent public high school player here in the DC area, at least good enough to earn a scholarship to play at it was Elon College at the time. It's now Elon University down in Burlington, North Carolina. And towards the latter part of high school and the beginning stages of my college career, I really started to develop a fascination and an equal love for strength and conditioning and for training. And when it was obvious to me that my formal playing days were over when I graduated from Elon, I figured what could be better than combining my original love of the game of basketball with this newfound love of strength and conditioning and fitness and training. And I decided to become a basketball performance coach. And as I mentioned previously, I had a chance to do that for almost 20 years before iterating into my current business as a motivational speaker.
What is the mindset switch to kind of say, I want to start helping these elite players become better? Because all this stuff is kind of led up to where you're doing now when you're on stages and you're talking to people and you're bringing the best out of people. But when did that switch happen for you? When did that switch happen for you, Alan?
Well, for me, the real hunger started with just trying to become the best player I was capable of. So, I was relentless in working on my own game, working on my own athleticism. Like many young players, I was infatuated with improving my vertical jump, with the goal of being able to dunk a basketball.
Right.
So a lot of it started with myself. And then when I realized, as I said, that my playing days were coming to an end, I figured what could be better than transferring that passion and that hunger and what I had been learning with myself and sharing that with other players. And while I did have aspirations of working with NBA players, to be honest, my main goal and what I started out doing was working with middle school and high school age players.
Oh, man.
That was a real passion for me, because I figured, I could have a real meaningful impact on their young lives, not just on the court or in the weight room, but I could serve as a role model to help them, in every area of their life. And that was something that was really, really important to me. And thankfully, I live here in the Washington, D.C. area, which is, a major hotbed for middle school, high school basketball and AAU basketball. So I had a chance to work with some elite level players before they became the household names that they are today. And, Kevin Durant is the most notable of those. And as I started to get ingrained with some of these younger players, that's what put me on the radar of Nike and of Jordan Brand and USA Basketball. And that's what opened the doors to working the skills academies and being able to meet players like Kobe Bryant and LeBron James and so forth. So it really started for a hunger of how could I be the best player I'm capable of? And then I decided to switch that focus and try and help other players do the same.
Do you find sometimes, Alan, like you end up learning from them? Because a lot of times the teacher learns from the students as well. Did you ever get some lessons from them as well?
Yes. I mean, I've learned from every player that I've ever had an opportunity to work with. And even now as a father of three, I'm amicably divorced. I've got 13-year-old twin sons and an 11-year-old daughter. And all three happen to be hoops players as well. But, it's amazing, as much as I try and share and model and teach to my own children, how many things they teach me back and how many things they reflect back. And in many cases, it's just they ask great questions. They metaphorically hold up a mirror to me so that I can certainly see some areas that I still need to improve. And it was always the same, when I was a coach and as a trainer. Every single player I worked with taught me something that I was able to add to my toolbox. And for that, I'm very grateful.
Alan, when did you know that you had something? Because there's always that spark when someone realizes like, wow, what I just said or what I just taught has some weight. When did you realize like, man, I got something here?
I think it was a gradual process. I don't think I had a light bulb moment per se. I was naturally fairly coordinated and had at least mediocre athleticism to be decent enough at basketball to keep playing, level after level. And throughout that, it had always been my tendency to be a very vocal leader. I always felt that it was my job to be the leader of the teams that I was on. It was my job to help motivate them. It was my job to help hold my teammates accountable. And those traits I took directly from my playing days and into my coaching days. And that's really the impetus for why I decided to leave the training space and become a motivational speaker and a keynote speaker. Was I wanted to take those same traits and all of the things that I'd learned, all these mindsets and strategies and routines and disciplines, and I wanted the ability to shift them to a new audience and shift them to people working in different vocations.
One of the things I always wanted to ask a motivational speaker, like when you're looking at that crowd, if you got a 500 or 1,000 people, what are you thinking in your head right then and there? What are you thinking in your head? Like, I have to help improve one person. What do you feel when you're on stage looking at that audience and you're giving them all these jewels and wisdoms and things that you've been through? What are you thinking in your head when you're delivering to them?
There's only three things that cross my mind. Number one is to be fully present. I'm not there to rehearse some type of tap dance. I'm there and I've done my due diligence and I've done the work on the front end and I've rehearsed. So my goal is to just be in the moment and be fully present. My second goal is to simply be of service. When I'm on stage, it's not about me. It's about the audience. And the only thing that I'm trying to do there is add value to them. So as long as what I'm saying, I believe will be helpful to them in their lives and in their businesses, then I feel that I'm being of service. And then the third thing is I just want to have fun. I mean, the reason I'm on that stage is because I'm enjoying what it is that I have an opportunity to do. I love what I do, and I want that to resonate. If I want folks to really lean in and listen to what I'm saying, then I want them to know that I care and that I'm having a good time in doing it. Because I figure if I'm not having fun, there's no way they're going to have fun with that experience as well. So, for me, if I can do those three things anytime I take the stage, then it most likely will result in at least impacting some of the people in the audience. I mean, I have the humility to know that I'm not going to reach everybody, but if I can reach a few people in the audience and say something that resonates or lands in a certain way, that they then feel compelled and inspired to change their behavior moving forward, change it for the better, of course, that is incredibly satisfying work.
Well, what's a story? There has to have been some success story where someone reached out to you and said, "Man, everything you said on that stage really touched me." Is there a story that really gets to you? And tell us about that.
Yeah, actually, just recently. I mean, I'm very thankful that these stories trickle in, fairly consistently. Many times through just a friendly DM, someone will hit me up on Instagram and say something, or if they have my text or email. But I was just in Gulf Shores, Alabama last week for a keynote, and it was for a client that I've done speaking engagements for before. So almost everyone in that audience had seen me speak the year prior. And a woman came up to me after and kind of reintroduced herself. And she said, you may not recognize me because I've lost 70 pounds since you spoke last year. And one of the main themes that I spoke on the year prior was about our habits, about our morning and evening routine, about prioritizing our self-care, about focusing on one area that we really want to try to improve and really connect to the reason that we want to improve it. And she came up and shared that. And I was blown away. And I let her know that while I may have been the one to share an idea or give a spark, she was the one that should, be incredibly proud of what she's done, because she is the one that put in all of the hard work. And losing 70 pounds is incredibly challenging. No, not easy at all.
Not easy.
Something that I wanted her to really feel good about. And, she said her journey's not done yet, but she's proud of what she's accomplished in the past year. And I gave her a big hug and a high five and told her that she should be. But that was just a recent example of someone that had shared something incredibly meaningful and impactful. And I was very, very thankful to be at least a very small part of her journey.
Especially like for the people who've seen you speak at another event. I mean, how do you come up with a theme for what you want to talk to the audience about? How do you do that? I mean, do you just say like, okay, this is what I've gone through this past year. There's some motivation in this. I want to take this to this audience. How do you come up with that, Alan?
Well, ultimately, it's whatever the client needs, and every event, every audience, every group, every team has slightly different needs. Now, with that said, I keep guardrails up of what it is that I feel I can add the most value. And for me, it's all kind of under the umbrella of performance. Now, some groups are looking for individual performance. How do we get each member of our team to show up as their best selves consistently so they can make a maximum contribution? Others are looking more for organizational performance. How can we get our elite rock stars to collaborate and be a cohesive unit and create a winning culture and play nicely together? So those are usually the two major pillars. And then, of course, offshoots of that are leadership performance. How can we teach our managers and our supervisors and our directors how to be more impactful and influential so that they can lead more effectively? Some groups are looking for increased sales performance. How can we sell our product or service at a higher level? But the thread that ties all of those together is performance. So as long as it's under that umbrella, then it's something that I feel I can add value in. If it's really anything outside of that, then that's not in my wheelhouse. And if someone reached out to me, I would simply recommend a colleague or a friend that has that area of expertise. I mean, for me, I stick to the handful of things that I think I know fairly well and that I'm confident I can add value in. And then under that, when I meet with a client who decides to hire me to speak, then I get a feel for what it is that they need. I get a feel for the theme of their event, who's going to be in the audience, what are the challenges and pain points that audience is experiencing, and then what are some tangible, practical, actionable lessons and stories and stats that I can share with them to help them do that. And,
That's
you know,
strong.
it's interesting because I have some central themes and some core beliefs that end up making their way into almost every keynote, workshop, or training because they're the pillars of what I believe. But then outside of those main pillars, everything else I do my best to customize to really hit the bullseye and the target for that specific client.
Man, you know, when you were talking about performance just now, I don't know if you've ever seen this show that comes on Showtime. It's called Billions, right? Uh,
Yes.
Please tell me you watch that show. And so one of the things that one of the people inside that show who's like my favorite in a crazy way is Wendy. Wendy is the performance coach. And like, you know, when these guys almost like they need a fix is the way that they kind of say it. And they go in and Wendy helps them realize things about themselves that sometimes they don't even know. Is that sometimes like, do you find yourself in that same situation too a lot, Alan?
Well, first and foremost, I love Billions. And at the time of this recording, I'm 100% caught up as I just watched episode 4 of season 7 last night.
Yeah.
So until they release next week's episode, I'm fully caught up. Huge fan of the show.
Same.
Brilliant writing, brilliant acting. I mean, it's a masterpiece.
Yeah.
And yes, Wendy Rhodes is one of my favorite characters as well. In fact, I've referenced her for some of the organizations that I've done work with. I find out if the person I'm speaking with has seen Billions, and if they say yes,
hey, I didn't see that in research. I didn't see that in research. That came up in our conversation right now about Billions.
It did, but when I'm speaking to that client, if they've seen Billions as a common reference point, then I say, hey, my goal is to kind of be the Wendy Rhodes for your organization. My goal is to be able to help you all raise your game and improve your individual and organizational performance. So yeah, what a magnificent show.
How do you do that? How do you be the performance coach and still be and still have that genuine being about yourself and still represent the organization? How do you do that?
Well, first and foremost, it's from listening. You know, I mean, one of the things that Wendy does unbelievably well is she's very observant. She pays attention even to the little things that go on. I guess originally at Axe Capital and now at Mike Prince Capital.
Yep.
But then during her actual one-on-one sessions, which are, you know, traditional therapy sessions, and that's not what I do. I'm not a therapist, but she's a brilliant listener, and she listens for the unconscious messages, and she listens for the things that are in between the words that are actually spoken. Then she certainly shares her expertise and her experience. But most of what she does is she just asks the right questions, and she gets the person she's talking to come up with the answers themselves, you know, and that's ultimately what I try and do. You know, I try and find the challenges or the pain points that an organization is having. I ask them a series of questions so that they're kind of dropping the breadcrumbs towards the direction that they want to go. I do share some of the pillars and strategies and disciplines that have worked for me and have worked with previous clients. But ultimately, I want them to figure that path out. And then one of my major roles is to then hold them accountable to that.
Wow.
Is to hold them accountable to the things that they say they're going to do. And I believe accountability is the glue that holds any organization together.
Dude, that's so strong. There's 3 things you said earlier. You said be present, and then you also said be of service and also have fun. And like what you just described with Wendy, using that as an example for those of you who don't really know what a performance coach is, and you've seen that show Billions, Alan's telling you right now. So like the being present part and being a good listener part, how did you figure out like those 3 magic pills for what you do, Alan? How did you get that?
I've just kind of formed that philosophy over time. I mean, and there are different stages to that. I mean, admittedly, very early in my speaking career, you know, in 2017 and 2018, I wasn't as present on stage as maybe I should have been, because I was so concerned with almost regurgitating the talk that I had, you know, rehearsed and tried to remember. You know, I'm trying to recall every single point and every single detail. Now I do everything I can to do my heavy lifting on the front end. And I prepare relentlessly. I have great discipline in my, you know, due diligence and in my rehearsal. And then I have confidence in myself that I know it well enough that I can just be on stage and be present, and that, I can share something that I had prepared, but then I'm also able to kind of, navigate it in a slightly different direction if I'm feeling that's what the audience needs at that moment. So,
Right.
This concept, that 3-pillar concept, is just something I've slowly developed over time.
Now, how about the have fun part? At what point did you learn how to have fun when you're speaking to people? Because it's not that easy. Like the first time someone they're speaking, or the second time, like you said, they're doing a routine. But how did you get to that point where you just said, you know what, I'm going to have fun in doing this? How did you do that?
I'm very thankful that both of the primary careers that I've chosen, first as a basketball performance coach and now as a motivational speaker,
Mhm.
are things I really enjoy and things I'm passionate about. I mean, you
Wow.
don't have to twist my arm to put me on stage in front of a group of sales professionals or a group of C-suite executives. That's exactly what I want to be doing. There are very few things that fill my bucket up as much as being able to share the things I'm passionate about with a group that's receptive. I mean, and even this conversation, I mean, hopefully you can feel my energy and my
Oh, I
enthusiasm,
feel it.
because I'm excited to talk to you. I'm excited to learn from you. I'm grateful that you care enough to ask me these questions. I appreciate the opportunity to share my passion and to share the things I enjoy with your audience. So to me, I look at all of these things as an opportunity. But ultimately, and I believed this wholeheartedly when I was in the training space, if I wanted my players to enjoy and have fun training, then I needed to enjoy and have fun when I was training them.
Absolutely.
And same thing
Absolutely,
from a
man.
speaking standpoint.
It's almost like I watch some of the players and they gravitate to some of the coaches because some of the coaches actually they're more down to earth. They make playing fun for them, you know? And then you end up having guys who play harder for one coach than they would for the other. And it's so how is it when you are looking at someone and you're doing a performance coaching? I'm not trying to give you to do a whole session here, but I mean, are you trying to you definitely listen to them? Are you trying to bring the best out of that person? And then how do you find that? That sounds so difficult to me to just say like, okay, I'm going to listen to you and you're going to just help improve that person's performance. I'm
Well,
fascinated
ultimately,
by this.
the only way to be able to provide a bridge to do that is to make sure that that person trusts you. And I believe trust is
Mm,
something that's earned. Trust is something that's also given. And I aim to earn trust. And one of the best ways to earn trust is to show people that you care. And
yeah.
I really and truly care about my work. I care about my craft. I care about my message, but I absolutely care about the person that's in front of me, whether that's virtual or in person, whether it's an individual one-on-one session or I have an opportunity to speak in front of 5,000 people.
Yeah.
Whoever is in front of me, I want them to know that I care. I care about them. I care about their performance. I care about their well-being and care about their future. And caring matters. Caring matters a lot. And if you can establish that trust and that other person knows you care and you can
Mhm.
do everything in your power to earn and deserve their respect,
Yeah.
well, now you have the foundation. You've created an environment where progress is now a possibility. And then every single person, every single audience is slightly different with what they need. But generally speaking, there are a handful of principles that I believe unite all high performers, whether
Right.
individually or organizationally. There's a handful of pillars that would be in one's best interest to emulate in a way that's authentic and genuine to them. So it's not like I'm coming up with something from scratch every single time I talk to someone.
Right. Right.
These handful of pillars, if most people will work towards mastery of them, especially during the unseen hours, they'll start to see improvement. But ultimately, all of that to say another big connective tissue is humility. And I
Mhm.
always make sure that whether I'm with someone one-on-one, whether I'm a guest on someone's podcast, or I'm speaking in front of a large audience, I want everyone to know that what I'm sharing is not coming from a place of mastery. That
Right.
this is all stuff that I am still working on. This is stuff that has troubled me in the past. These have been challenges and adversities that I've had. I haven't mastered any of this. Now, what I can say with a huge smile and a tremendous amount of pride is I have made progress in many
Wow.
of these areas. And ultimately, my goal is to just share the things that have allowed me to make progress in hopes that they will allow someone else to do the same. And it's important for folks to know that even if someone has me on stage in front of 5,000 people, I'm not a master. I'm not a guru. I'm a normal guy that is trying to figure this stuff out just like they are.
Wow.
And I feel like it's my duty to steward the message of the things that I've tried that haven't worked so they can learn the lesson, and share the things I've tried that have worked well so they can hopefully benefit too.
Now, Alan, I know you've probably been on stage in front of, an intimate crowd, and then, some larger crowds too. And one thing I've heard from like musicians is they always feed off of the audience. Is it the same case for you sometimes? Like if they're more engaged, you get more pumped up and you can give them more. I mean, what's that like? Because I mean, you're a motivational speaker, and sometimes you need that as well too, right?
Oh, absolutely. And you hit it right on the head. That's so insightful. There is definitely an energy exchange. I mean, I
Mm,
look at it, it's more like a dance, and even in a traditional keynote, which are supposed to be more one directional. It is supposed to be me sharing information. It's not a conversation per se, but I still want it to have a conversational feel to it. I
wow.
still want them to feel engaged and lean in and feel like they are a part of this. But there's absolutely an energy exchange. And part of my job being on stage is to figure that part out. If the room is already pumping and it's high energy and everybody's going, then it's my job to actually bring it back down just a little bit. The saying is you don't put
Oh,
sugar
man.
on top of sugar.
Yeah.
If it happens to be, if the room tends to be lacking a little bit of energy for whatever reason, then it's
Mhm.
my job to try and raise the collective energy level. So, for me, it's all about that dance. And what's interesting is it can be caused from a variety of different reasons. I mean, it
Yeah.
can be the time of day you're speaking. It can be the day of the event. If you're speaking on the fourth day of a 4-day conference at 8 a.m. in Las Vegas, you have to go into it knowing this group is probably tired. They're
Yeah.
probably fatigued. This is day 4. They've
Yeah.
probably gone out at night and they've had some drinks and they've stayed up late. So if I walk into that session ready to give my A game and to deliver, and I
Mm.
notice that the energy level is a little bit lower, that's okay. That's normal. That's understandable. I don't get angry at the audience. I don't hold that against them. I try to slowly but confidently, and incrementally draw that energy level up. So to me, it's a constant energy dance. It's an energy exchange, and all of that to still say that my goal is to just be of service to the audience. So what energy level do they need from me right now for this message to really land and for this message to resonate? And then I have to deliver whatever it is that they need, not necessarily what I want, but it's what they need that matters most.
Wow. I love that. Alan, I'm feeling your energy over here, man. Let's take a quick break, and I want to come back and I want to start talking about leadership, because you also mentioned that there's two things you said. You said accountability and you also said leadership. So I want to talk about those two things.
Hold tight, listeners. We're taking a brief pause. Going forward, we'll be back shortly with more insightful conversations.
Are we fucking ready? Roll cameras. Action! Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Hov. H to the OV. I used to move snowflakes by the OZ. I guess even back then you can call me CEO of the ROC. Ho, fresh out the frying pan into the fire. I be the music biz #1 supplier. Fly it in a piece of paper bearing my name. Got the hottest chick in the game wearing my chain. That's right.
Hey, it's Eric here from VIP Marketing, and I want to ask you, digital marketers, something. Are you frustrated with your current PPC marketing campaigns? Well, I want to tell you about a tool that we use here at our agency. It's called Optmyzr. You have the ability to get your reports up to date and make sure that you get alerts on them. You can even work into workflows as well. So if you're frustrated with your campaigns right now in the reporting systems that you use, I want to give you a 14-day free trial of Optmyzr. Go to optmyzr.com/go/VIP.
Welcome back to Going Forward. We hope you're recharged because we've got an exciting second half waiting for you. Get ready to dive deeper and be inspired. Let's keep the momentum going.
Man, we're back on Going Forward, and Alan just he had me over here all pumped up, at the break, man. Giving me some of that energy, man. So, man, I want to thank you. For those of you just joining us, I got Mr. Alan Stein Jr. here. He is a hell of a guy. He's definitely got a lot of energy, a performance coach. He is a corporate speaker. He does a lot of keynotes across the country. Alan, tell us what corporations or what industries have you spoken in front of?
I tell you, it's been really fun. I'm fairly industry agnostic since what I share are primarily general principles in the performance and leadership space. I mean, it is amazing the wide breadth of industries that I've spoken with and spoken for, a lot of different brands and companies. But one of the cool parts is the specific groups that I'm usually asked to speak in front of are leadership groups, C-suite executives, managers, directors, supervisors, people that have been given positions of authority, but admit that they need to improve their influence and their impact with those that they serve. As I've mentioned before, I do a ton in the sales space. So sales professionals,
right.
Folks that sell products or services. It's been my experience. They really resonate with this sports to business kind of analogy.
Oh, yeah.
Strong appreciation for repetition, for the unseen hours, for daily disciplines. So the message usually resonates really well. And then the third group that I actually do a lot of speaking with are smaller or mid-sized companies, and I speak to the entire team. I speak to from the intern and the front desk worker all the way to the CEO and everything in between, everybody that's on that org chart, and these are companies of 500 people or less. But I really talk to everyone within that organization. So I have an absolute blast doing it. And to me, I enjoy speaking to new industries, brands and businesses that I personally did not know a lot about, because in my due diligence and in my research to learn everything I can about them and their industry, I'm learning and I'm growing.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I love about this business. Very similar to the question you asked earlier, with every player that I trained, they taught me something. It's the same thing now in the speaking world. Every single business, event, or organization that I serve, I'm very fortunate to learn a ton in return. So that's part of what keeps me so high energy. Is I love to grow, to improve, to develop, to evolve, and this work almost forces me to do that.
Sometimes when people, especially like in some industries, sales, or they're not always bringing you there to lift sales. They're bringing you there to sometimes just help with the morale. You feel like that sometimes?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But those things are directly correlated. If an organization is having kind of a dip in the sales cycle, let's take realtors, for example. When interest rates go up, it makes, folks in the mortgage and the lending industries, it makes their job exponentially harder. It's harder to sell homes when interest rates go up. So understandably, when something outside of their control, like rising interest rates, makes it harder for them to do their job and to complete as many sales, it's understandable. It's part of the human condition for potentially confidence and morale to suffer. And it's my job to help uplift that and to get them to refocus on the things they do have control over. And I take a tremendous amount of pride in that.
That used to happen a lot in the auto industry years ago, where they used to really invest in speakers. And I think they definitely need to get around to reaching out to people like you again to not only help the morale, but to change the way that sales happens, or even the approach to sales from some people, because they come from the 1980s Cadillac man mentality, and today's society is totally different. And I think they can definitely use a spark and some morale like that. question for you. Because we talked about performance a lot, and one thing that happened was COVID. COVID changed a lot on how people were working. I mean, even us, we had a 5,000 square foot building that we were working in, and then our teams went remote, and we just started doing things across the country. So how has that been? How was COVID affected performance? I mean, did some people thrive in it? And how was that for you being able to coach some people who are post COVID?
Well, boy, you certainly hit it on the head. I mean, when the pandemic actually hit in March of 2020, and I saw my entire year's calendar get wiped right off of the map,
Yeah.
I knew that I had to start making a pivot and a change.
Mhm.
And in full transparency, those first couple of days when so much was unknown and so much was uncertain,
Yeah.
I found myself a little panicked, a little anxious, feeling a little dejected. I mean, I make the vast majority of my income delivering in-person keynotes, workshops, and trainings. And when
Mhm.
that was obvious that was no longer going to happen, I was a little bit worried. And I gave myself the grace and space to be a human and to feel those feelings. And then after about 72 hours, I decided to kind of shift my perspective and really practice what I preach. And kind of the number two of those three pillars I gave you earlier, I
Yeah.
said, all right, well, how can I still be of service? Clearly there aren't going to be in-person
Wow.
events for the time being. People are not going to hire me to come in and speak to their teams. What can I do to still add value? What can I do to still be of service? And quickly switch to being able to offer, have some virtual offerings,
Yeah.
be able to share with groups remotely via Zoom and so forth. So I just shifted the focus off of the woe is me, my business is suffering, to how can I still add value? And
Wow.
I firmly believe when I was able to take the focus off of myself and put it on to pouring into others, then that gave me my optimism back. That gave me my self-worth back. That allowed me to continue to move forward and was able to work with hundreds of groups over the pandemic, virtually and remotely. And, even now, even though it's been 3+ years since the pandemic started, we still see remnants of that to this
Wow.
day. And
That's
really,
awesome.
for every group that brought me in and brings me in, there have been two kind of different groups. There's the groups that the pandemic, because of the industry they're in, it absolutely demoralized them. The
Yeah.
folks in the hospitality industry, for example, and
Yeah.
airline industry. I mean, they talk about uncontrollable factors that just like a wrecking ball
Oh, man.
ran through them. And those groups needed me to come in and, as you said so brilliantly, lift their morale, get them to refocus on the things they do have control over,
Mhm.
get them to believe that there will be a better day coming, and will they be prepared for it? So you had the groups that, the pandemic was detrimental to their bottom line, and I was asked to come in and help motivate and inspire. Then on the other end, you have organizations where, quite honestly, the pandemic helped their business.
Yeah.
The pandemic, having a captive audience locked in their homes for a set period of time was really good for their business model.
Yeah.
And they had the opposite effect. Their teams were feeling burnt out. Their teams were working around the clock and burning the candle at both ends. And, so those were groups that I had to go in and help them deal with that burnout, deal with that stress, deal with that stagnation. Let them know how much the world appreciated their ability to help keep us all afloat during the pandemic,
Wow.
but give them some strategies and some tools to help them kind of recalibrate and to refocus. So yeah, it's been a variety of groups that have needed that. And now that most of the pandemic, I believe, is somewhat in our rear view mirror, at least at present,
Mhm.
things are starting to shift back into this new sense of normal. And, now some of the issues folks have, one of the biggest ones is organizations trying to decide, do we make our people come back to our brick and mortar establishment?
Great
Or
topic.
do
I wanna
we
talk
allow
about that
them
one.
to work remotely? Do we allow this hybrid workforce? So there have been lots of things that stemmed from the pandemic, and now groups are trying to figure out as they try to recalibrate their cultures.
What I liked in the beginning when you started talking about this was, you actually ate your own dog food.
Yeah.
You ate your own dog food. Like you were saying, like, you know what? How can you still be of service? You got away from the woe is me, and you performance coached yourself. Dang, man, that's something, man. So, I mean, this topic actually came up. It was actually on the radio today. I was listening. I was driving my son to school, And one of the things that they were saying was like a lot of people don't want to go back to the office. Some people felt like they were more productive. Now, you've been able to see it before and after the pandemic. What are you seeing as far as like the hybrid work? Are you finding that people are performing higher and they can still accept that advice, or is it they just need to go back to the office? What do you see? What is from the performance coach standpoint? Tell me what you've seen, Alan.
I highly encourage leaders of any organization to not grasp too tightly to the way things used to be. I think it's important that they ask themselves before the pandemic hit, basically 2019 and before, what things worked really, really well for us as an organization and what things served us well. And let's take a look at that list. But also have the humility to say what things didn't work very well and what things should we have tried to avoid, and look at that. Then they need to look at another subset and say, okay, from roughly March 2020, fast forward maybe for 2 years to 2022, when the world drastically changed, they have to ask themselves the same question. When things changed, what things were working really well for us and what things weren't? And then basically take the two and use that as an invitation to have an open conversation with everybody in the organization to say, okay, as we try to create a new normal moving forward, what are some of the things from the previous, for some of the things from the past that we can still implement? But what are some of the lessons that we learned and new ways of doing things that we learned in the pandemic that we need to continue doing? I think it's important too that it is a conversation. If you have a leader on one end saying you absolutely have to come into the office, 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, and you have an employee on the other end saying, I want to work 24/7 remotely, I never want to come in. I mean, those things are on opposite ends of the spectrum. I just want to see an open dialogue where both groups can kind of voice their opinion and their preferences on why they think what they think, but then be prepared to collaborate, be prepared to concede, be prepared, to figure out a way moving forward. I would hate to see a business lose some of their top talent because they're so rigid in what they believe the workforce should look like. But at the same time, I want those that are working for teams, to have the humility and the respect to do what their leadership thinks is most advantageous for the organization as a whole. So I think it needs to be both. And I'm a big believer in being able to work together where both groups feel heard, both groups feel seen, and ultimately be able to work that out. But for me, I've always, I've always focused on results and focused on excellence. And if someone can prove to me that they can still do their job at a super high level and do it remotely, whether it's entirely remotely or maybe some type of hybrid version, but if they've proven that they can still get the job done, then as a leader, this is just my own personal style, I believe in giving them the autonomy to do that. I believe in letting folks make decisions that directly affect their own work. So to me, I know that was a mouthful and I went.
I think it's perfect. I think it's perfect because sometimes it comes down to trust as well too. And it's a matter of trust, and you hit the nail on the head because truthfully, that same person you were describing was me. Like there was a point where I had 2-3 year people, 2-3 year employees, key employees, and then you had like a almost a 7-year employee, which is unheard of, someone working for your company that long now. And they left, and it was because I still had that mindset of that 80s management. You know what I'm saying? I had that mindset of, I can work 10-12 hours a day and I can be in the building. You need to be in the building too. And then what happens is the other companies that are adopting that mindset, just like you said, and having that conversation, they're winning. They were winning and I was losing, So I totally see it. But then you also touched on something as well too. You said when the leader brings them back into the building, right? And I wanted to ask you this question. Like sometimes there's a leader and then there's a manager, and I think people confuse the two. What is your definition of a leader? Because I know you do a lot of leadership talks as well.
I mean, ultimately, a leader is just someone that has a positive influence over others. I mean, that's kind of a page taken out of John C. Maxwell's book. That's not really an original thought on my end, but it's certainly one that I double stamp. And leadership is not necessarily a position or a title, Leadership is more of an approach and a mindset and a perspective. And
Yeah.
and if you're doing everything in your power to pour into others and to help them make improvements that they don't believe or wouldn't be able to do without your stewardship, that's what being a leader is all about. And to me, regardless of title or tenure or where you fall on the org chart, you can make the decision and make the choice to be a leader. And leadership is really what every organization starts and stops with. I mean, you show me who's leading an organization, and I'll be able to predict with pretty good accuracy whether or not that group will be successful.
So how does it, let's just say, we talked about some of those companies post-pandemic. How does a company know when to bring in an Alan? How do they know when to bring you in? Like, is there like some kind of morale meter? Or how do they know, okay, we need to call Alan Stein, or we need to call a speaker, a keynote speaker. We need to pump these people up. How do they know when? Because I mean, you've done stages, but then you've done some individual things as well, where you've done things for corporations. So how does a leader know when to call you?
Well, I'm obviously very, very biased, so I'll say this with both a wink and a smile, but I think it's in every organization's best interest to have an outside voice. Whether that's me or someone else is irrelevant. Whether it's me or it's Wendy Rhodes, it doesn't matter. But they need to have some type of outside voice to help emphasize and reinforce what it is that they're sharing regularly as a leadership group. Because no matter how good a leader is, inevitably their voice will start to run numb if their team only hears from them. I even know this as a parent. As I mentioned earlier, I've got 3 children. I want my children to be exposed to teachers and to coaches and to trainers and to friends. I want other people pouring into my children. If the only voice they hear is from me or from their mother, at some point they're going to start to tune that out.
Wow.
So the reason I say every group needs an outside voice, if someone brings me in, it can simply be to echo and to reinforce the principles that they're already telling their team. But if it comes from an outsider, it will resonate differently.
Yes.
That group will sit there and go, wow, I've heard our CEO say this numerous times. Now I'm hearing this guy who used to train basketball players. He's saying the same thing. Now it's starting to click. On the other side, if a group is having some struggles and they're facing some challenges and some adversities, that's also a reason to bring someone in, someone who can share new perspectives and new ways of doing things. I take a lot of pride in the fact that I've never worked in corporate America, yet that's who my target clients are. And the reason is because I share a completely fresh perspective. If I've worked in corporate America my entire life, then there's a chance that what I'm going to share with them has blinders on, if you will. It will be somewhat confined because that's all I know. So I tell them I'm going to share things, some proven principles that have very high utility, but I'm going to do so with a very fresh perspective. And it doesn't mean that everything I share will work or will fit or is right for that group, but at least it's a way of looking at things differently. And to me, what's most important, and this is another major topic that we hear in corporate America all the time now, is about the importance of diversity. And I absolutely believe diversity is important. But if you really break it down, the power of diversity comes down to diversity of thought. Now, when most people hear the word diversity, they think of race or ethnicity,
immediately.
Gender, they think of age, they think of political affiliation, they think of religious beliefs, and all of those things are important. But really what each of those different things does is it gives a diversity of thought.
I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah, and that's what I want groups to have. Now think about it. Even you and me, we have some clear diversity differences between each other. And that is an awesome thing. That means that your journey and the framework and lens at which you've looked through your entire life is going to be different than mine. And that should be welcomed. That should be celebrated. That means if both you and I are sitting in on an inter-office meeting, we'll have different vantage points to share our thoughts.
Damn, Alan, I never thought of that.
Leaders, they understand how important that is because you want the best ideas. And the only way you can curate the best ideas is by getting them from as many different sources as you can. So I know that if I was a leader in corporate America, I would want an incredibly diverse workforce. And it's okay if it's all of the boxes that I mentioned earlier, but ultimately those things aren't what's important. It's the diversity of thought that's important, but that's what those things end up leading to.
Dude, I never thought of that. I always thought of diversity as just, the different races in the room or genders, but never thought of diversity of thought. That's powerful, dude.
But it does start.
That's
So
so
let's just say
powerful. So freaking powerful.
even diversity of race or ethnicity.
Yeah.
What that means is the way that you personally have experienced life is most likely different than the way I have experienced life.
True.
Because you and I are diverse in different ways.
True.
And that is a good thing. So if I'm a good leader, I want to stay open to hearing how you've experienced life and to what your perspectives and opinions are, as I do with everybody else on the team that may look, walk, act, and talk differently than you do. And now what we're doing is we're just compiling so many different ideas and perspectives. If everyone in your organization looks, walks, and talks the exact same, there's a good chance that many of their experiences and perspectives will also be the same. And now you're somewhat limited. And to me, that's why I would want a workforce that has a variety of different races and ethnicities, a variety of different ages and genders, a variety of different political and religious affiliations and beliefs, because all of that is going to significantly bias how we see the world. And that is okay. So I would want to surround myself with as many different types of people as possible, because I want the best idea to win.
When you do talks like that and you're talking to corporations, do you normally ask like how diverse is the audience? You get those things as well?
Yes. Yeah. And that's one of the things that we try and ask in advance to help me prepare. And, but at the same time, I mean, I can usually see it. I mean, when I step on stage, I can see, obviously I can see certain of those boxes from a diversity standpoint. And with that said, I'm not saying that an organization that has, less diversity doesn't have the potential to be successful, or that they're doing anything wrong. They're not necessarily doing anything wrong. This is just my own personal perspective that diversity of thought is the way to go. And I'll think, like, if I was a head basketball coach, I would want my 3 assistants to have vastly different backgrounds, vastly different experiences. I'd most likely want one of my assistants to skew towards the older end, and I'd also want one to skew towards the younger end. I'd want one of them maybe that was raised in the North and one of them that was raised in the South.
Right.
I want to have as many different, because it's going to foster an environment for just diverse thinking. And to me, that's what's most important. See, too many organizations look at diversity and inclusion and equity as simply a box to check. And just to simply say, well, we're doing, and they're missing the point. They're the ones that will actually reap the benefit by leaning into diversity, inclusion, and equity.
Man, I love that. Well said. You said something earlier about your kids and how you want your kids to be able to learn from all these different people. But then, if anyone who's watching this video, you see right to Alan's right, you'll see the book Raise Your Game. It's a book that you guys have. Is that side right there. It's a book with you and also John Sturfield. And inside that book, you say you're going to give some of the key principles and also learning from the best of the best. Give me some of those key principles. I don't want you to tell me everything, because I want people to get your book, and I'll put some links to your book as well inside our show notes. But tell us about the book.
Well, there's several key principles that I share on stage and that I share on page very regularly, but I'll go ahead and tease you guys with 3. And I think these 3, if folks embrace these and lean into these, they really are the key to unlock anyone's high performance. The first is something I actually learned when I worked the Kobe Bryant Skills Academy for the first time. And I got a chance to watch Kobe work out for the first time. And I got a chance to talk to him. And he said something very profound that really changed my life. He said, the best never get bored with the basics. And that's really been my foundation moving forward, is that the best never get bored with the basics, and the best work relentlessly during the unseat hours to master the fundamentals of their craft. Now, clearly, the fundamentals of basketball are different than the fundamentals of being an elite sales professional, but both have fundamentals. And if you want to be good at anything, you get good at the basics. You get good at the fundamentals. You understand that repetition is not a form of punishment.
Oh, yeah.
It's the most effective form of skill acquisition and learning known to man. So number 1 is never get bored with the basics. Number 2 is learn how to earn your confidence through repetition, but blend it with humility. The blend of confidence and humility is what allows folks to be incredibly high performers. Earn the right to be confident by working on mastery of the basics and putting in the reps, but you have to stay humble. See, when you stay humble, you stay open to feedback. When you're humble, you're open to being coached. When you're humble, you can acknowledge that no matter how good you get, you still believe you can get better.
Absolutely.
You're not worried about playing the comparison game. You're not worried about saying, well, I'm already the best on the team.
Right.
That's irrelevant. What you're asking yourself is, am I the best that I'm capable of becoming? And humility is what allows you to do that. Yet you still want to earn the right to be confident. Your basketball player needs to be confident if they're going to shoot that game-winning shot. And they're confident because they've put in the reps when no one's watching in empty gyms to earn the right to be able to hit that shot. So first is never get bored with the basics. Second is the ability to blend confidence with humility. And the third is have a trust, respect, and an appreciation for the process. It's awesome to have, lofty goals. It's great to have a North Star that you're pursuing.
Yeah.
But once you've figured out those goals in that North Star, refocus your lens on what's right in front of you, the day-to-day.
Wow.
What are the steps or the skills or the mindsets or the habits or the beliefs that you need to execute every single day to incrementally and systematically work closer towards that goal or that North Star. And then focus on that. Focus on the process. Don't worry about that goal as much as you worry about what leads to that goal.
Yeah.
The best example I can think is the analogy of a brick wall. If you're tasked with building a brick wall, don't put too much time thinking about the wall itself. Put your attention into laying each brick as carefully and as precisely as possible. Because if you can, with discipline, consistently lay each brick exactly where it needs to go, then the wall will simply take care of itself. You don't have to obsess over the wall. You need to obsess over laying perfect bricks. And if you do that, the wall will take care of itself. And it's the same thing with any type of sales goal. It's the same thing in sport. Like, you don't need to worry about having more points on the scoreboard than your opponent. All you need to focus on is this possession. In basketball, can we get the best shot possible this possession?
Yeah.
And then on defense, can we make our opponent take the worst shot possible this possession? If you do those two things consistently, your team takes the highest percentage shot and the other team takes the lowest percentage shot. The scoreboard will take care of itself.
Man. Alan, I damn sure enjoyed our talk today, man. I did. I really did enjoy our talk, man.
I did as well, man.
I think you dropped a lot of jewels there, man. And you brought up one of the greats, and it's so interesting. We hear so many great things about Kobe Bryant's work ethic after he's gone. And I feel horrible that I didn't watch all of his games now that he's not here, Tell us about, someone like him. I mean, for someone like him to give you that quote in number one, the best never get tired of the basics, or you know what I mean? Did I say that right?
You did. The best never get bored with the basics.
The best never get bored with the basics. What is one thing you learned from someone like a Kobe Bryant?
Well, one thing for quick clarity. So Kobe was never a client of mine. He'd always worked with Tim Grover and Tim Grover's staff. And I want to give a major shout out to Tim. A lot of people don't know this, but Tim was really the only guy in the private sector doing professional level training when I graduated college in the late 90s. Wow. So he kind of served as my avatar, someone that kind of knocked down walls and proved that someone could make a living as a professional basketball trainer, as a strength and conditioning coach. And so for that, I'm very, very grateful. And Kobe was Tim's client. I had a chance to be hired by Nike to work their summer skills academies. And Nike built summer camps around their signature athletes. And at that time in 2007, Kobe Bryant was one of them. And I had a chance to work that event. And at that event, I had several conversations with Kobe. I had an opportunity to watch one of his early morning workouts and got to learn a lot from him in a very short period of time. And that never getting bored with the basics was definitely the epicenter of that. And I just remember the reason it was such a seismic change in my perspective was, as a younger coach, I made the mistake of thinking that the key to being a high performer was doing the flashy stuff, the
Yeah.
sexy stuff.
Yeah.
I thought when I went to watch him work out that I'd see some drills with a ton of sizzle. And instead, I just saw him doing a handful of very, quite honestly, rudimentary level drills, but he was doing them with unparalleled work ethic and unparalleled precision. And he wanted to work towards mastery of his footwork and his shooting mechanics and everything that he did in the game. And he built his game on such a sturdy foundation of the fundamentals. That's what it allowed him to ascend to being one of the greatest players of all time. And, you combine his work ethic with his respect for the basics, his engaging of the process. He certainly blended that confidence and humility. And what's interesting is most would not describe the Kobe Bryant, the Black Mamba, as a humble player, but they're looking at humility different. They're looking at it maybe at his approach or his trash talking.
Wow.
But the reason Kobe had humility was because he was open to being coached and trained by somebody like Tim Grover. He was open to feedback from competent coaches that could tell him how he could improve his game. He was very process oriented. Kobe took a page out of Jordan's book.
Mm-hmm.
Every single offseason tried to find one area of his game that he was going to focus on and try and level up, and that is why, he's on the Mount Rushmore of all-time players because of that approach. And even though I only got to spend a very small window of time with him,
you got to touch the cloth, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so awesome, man. One thing, Alan, that I always do while we wrap up here is I always ask our guests, what does going forward mean to them in their lives, their business, and in their careers? So, Alan, I'll ask you, what does going forward mean to you?
Going forward means to me having clarity on the person that I'm trying to become. And I'll use this framework for your listeners. I'm almost 48 years old. I'll turn 48 in January. And I'm crystal clear on the man I want to be 20 years from now, the 68-year-old Alan. Now, with that said, I know that time is not promised. I know that tomorrow is not guaranteed. That no matter how good of care I take of myself, there's nothing that guarantees that I'll be on this planet for another 20 years. But barring something unforeseen, let's hypothesize that I will. Well, without getting too granular, going forward to me means knowing that when I'm 68, I want to be physically, mentally, and emotionally fit. I want to have a great, strong, and deep relationship with my children and my family and my friends and my clients. When I'm 68, I want to be doing work that I consider meaningful and in service of others. So that's the vision I have going forward of the potential 68-year-old Alan. Well, how do I use that? Every single decision I make in my life in present day, I run through that filter and I ask myself, is making this decision going to take me closer to being that 68-year-old, or is it going to take me further away?
Wow.
Is what I'm going to do right now going forward going to move me closer to being that version of myself or not? And then I just try to stack as many yeses as I can each day. I try to stack as many small wins and make as many good decisions as I can. Now, I don't aim for perfection. And trust me, I am not perfect. I'm not batting 1,000 and I'm not getting straight A's. I, like everybody else, have flaws and infallible and occasionally make
all do.
Yeah, that aren't in, going forward, moving me in that direction. But I try to limit those. And when I do make mistakes, I try to learn from them and move forward. But if I can make the vast majority of the decisions in my life in alignment with becoming that person, it does two things. One, I'm kind of designing my future in the present. If anyone that knows me when I'm 68 years old, please don't be surprised if I'm physically, mentally, and emotionally fit. Don't be surprised if I have a great relationship with my kids. And don't be surprised if I'm doing work that I find meaningful.
Wow.
Because I'm designing my future by the decisions I make in the present. But what's really important for your listeners and viewers to know is I'm not delaying happiness and I'm not delaying becoming that person. Mm-hmm. I am that person in present time because that's when I'm actually making those decisions. So I say this with humility, but with a tremendous amount of pride. Right now in my life at almost 48 years old, I am physically, mentally, and emotionally fit. I do have a strong connection with my children and my family and my friends. And I am currently doing work like being a guest on your podcast that I consider in service of others. So I'm reaping the benefits in real time, while at the exact same time, I'm designing my future, as unpromised and as uncertain as that may be. And it all starts with that simple framework. And here's the question I ask myself every single night before I go to bed. I say, Alan, you just traded 24 hours of your life for the progress that you made today. Are you happy with that trade? And if the answer is yes, then I can rest my head peacefully and get a good night's sleep.
Wow.
On the rare occasion that answer is no, when I have the humility to look in the mirror and say, Alan, today was not your best day. You made some poor decisions. You did some things you probably shouldn't have. You weren't your best self today. I give myself some grace and some space and the permission to be less than perfect. I learn from it, and I still get a sound night's sleep because I know I get another crack at this thing tomorrow.
Right. Man, Alan, really good, man. Really good, man. I want to definitely thank everyone who's listened to Alan and I's conversation today, man. Alan, I really hope that someone found this to be meaningful. I hope that some corporation out there listens to this and says, this is the guy that we need on stage or speaking to our people, or the next event planner. If you hear this guy right now, you know you got the right guy. Make sure you put him on the right time on stage too. Right, Alan? We don't want to put him on 8 o'clock on day 4 in Vegas, for example, but we definitely want him there. So if you guys feel like this has definitely been a benefit to you, or it can be a benefit to someone else as well, go on and give us a great rating as well. And also forward this podcast over to others. I want to thank you guys for giving us your most valuable asset, which is your time. This is Going Forward. I want to thank you all for giving us your most valuable asset, your time. And also a huge thank you to our sponsors over at Optmyzr. For all of you who are running PPC campaigns and you want to see how to do it better and get better results and actually boost the performance of your campaigns and save time, get a free trial at optmyzr.com/go/VIP.